Welcome to the Cybersecurity Journal. This is the first video after the introductory video. I'm going to mostly focus on what cybersecurity is and why it's important to you as a person and your family and your friends. But we got to start with business. Cybersecurity is really the protection of systems and data online. So in a company, they're going to have all kinds of different types of data. They're going to have PII, we call it personally identifiable information, which is people's social security numbers, home addresses, phone numbers, medical information, things like that they would, have for the contracts with insurance companies or whatever. Now, one specific piece of information, like a phone number, is not necessarily PII, because a phone number is something that people give to everybody, right, to talk to them on the phone or text. In today's day and age, talking is not as much of a thing as when I was a kid. But that's not just one by itself a piece of PII, right? It is something identifiable to you. A social security number, however, or like a Medicaid number, something like that you might have, that's more personally identifiable of who you are. So driver's license, with the driver's license number, your passport, right? Those are important things that are identifiable to you. But in a business sense, you take multiples of those things and put them together, and now you start getting PII. So a company has to protect that for their users. If you're in the medical world, you have HIPAA, HIPAA. And whether you know what HIPAA really is or not is not really a big deal. You know enough because every time you go to a doctor, a hospital, something for the first time, they always have you fill out this disclosure, which is them telling you how they're going to treat your data, your medical data. And based off of PII and HIPAA data, there are what we call security frameworks, compliance type solutions that the business or the hospital or whatever it is has to follow in order to ensure that they are protecting that data as best as possible, to the best of their ability. And by following these security practices, they're doing what they can to make sure that your data is encrypted at rest, that the data, when it's transferred from a doctor to a hospital or an imaging lab to the doctor, that data is encrypted in between, and bad people can't try to get into the middle of it and grab that data, which they could use for multiple nefarious purposes, which we'll explain a few of those a little bit later. So it's not just your data, it's those systems that are handling the data. Your data is stored somewhere, whether it's on a computer or a server or in the cloud now. It all comes down to hard drives. A hard drive is just a basic component of a computer, server, storage system, whatever, that writes ones and zeros to the disk. And in the correct order of ones and zeros, the computer can understand what that data is supposed to be. It can convert it to a value that's supposed to be a number or a letter, something like that, at the very, very basic, simple understanding of data being stored, okay? Now, when you take that data, you put it on a hard drive as part of a server or a system, the system has to be accessed somehow, right? We have databases, we have applications, we have the online storage like OneDrive or Google Drive. We have all these different things of where it stores that data. But the storage of that data just comes down to there's a physical server somewhere with a physical storage solution attached to it that data is residing on. It has to be written somewhere, otherwise it's just ephemeral. Those systems have to be protected because they're running applications and the applications are vulnerable. Somebody could hack into an application and now they've got access to that back end data, whether it's a database or like a file folder with a bunch of files on it. Okay. So it's because we're protecting not just the data, but the systems. It means that we've got to put other systems in place that are going to monitor those and monitor that data flow back and forth and protect it. Stop people from getting into it, hacking into it, and getting that data. So cybersecurity is the practice of all of that, protecting that infrastructure at a business level and protecting the user's data. Now, there's another piece of data that companies are going to have, and that's what we call their IP, their intellectual property. Some companies, especially Department of Defense contractors, we call them DoD contractors, they're dealing with very sensitive information, including the main ones, classified, the secret, the top secret, right? Things that require special certifications or background checks and everything to be run on a person in order to be able to access that data. And that data is very, very sensitive because it could be data that if it were to get into the wrong hands of a country that doesn't like the United States, they could take that data and they could build weapons against us, or they could capture one of our systems and then reverse engineer it with that data, figure out what it is and make their own, or figure out how to compromise our systems and make our defense type things, whether it's computers or rockets or nuclear facilities that are, protecting the heat levels and things like that. They could infiltrate that and attack it, and it could be very damaging to the United States. So we have that kind of data, and we have our intellectual property. That's the stuff that makes a company tick, right? Every company out there has their secret sauce of what they do to make a service or a product, okay? And you need to protect that data. The company needs to protect that data. Otherwise, they're going to lose their competitive edge. Everybody who's a competitor to them could figure out how theirs works and then make their own. So part of that intellectual property are your patents, your copyrights, your trademarks, things like that the company needs to protect. So that's kind of cybersecurity as a whole. And why we need it is simply, as I've been saying all along, it's to protect the security, also the privacy of that data and those systems that a company uses for day-to-day usage of it. In a manufacturing plant, it includes all of the little computers and sensors that run conveyor belts or furnaces or a drill press or some kind of a lathe, right? All these different kinds of machines. Why is this important to you as a person? Well, at least still for now, people are very important to a business. Not everything's computerized. Not everything can run by AI. There still has to be a human component in the middle of all this. And that means that the people who are doing the daily work, who are handling that data or handling those systems, they need to understand what this is and the risks associated with that data getting into other hands. And it doesn't just stop when that person clocks out at the end of the day and then start when they clock in the next day. They take that home. We call this a culture. The culture of the company, if they're very security minded, are going to make sure that their employees are all being security focused or security minded when they're at work, and that they take that out of the workplace to home. Because so many people are on social media. They've got Instagrams and Facebooks and Twitter and Snapchat. Like, you could just go on and on and on. And people like to post things. People are social. That's not a problem. The challenge is when people don't understand that there's some things about work that they just shouldn't say. They don't need to be talking about, oh, I've got a special project at work, it's really cool. Even just saying something like that could get into the wrong hands, and the bad actors could go, oh, they've got a special project and I know what the company does. I think I want to know what that is. And it's going to start them. It just makes you a target, your company a target all of a sudden. So those people need to be very cautious. Well, a wife comes home, she's working on this special project, she's doing some kind of major engineering project. She comes home, she talks to her husband about it. The husband isn't really into that kind of stuff, but he's very excited for his wife to be working on it. And so he goes and tells all of his buddies, oh yeah, my wife's this engineer and she's working on this really cool project. I can't tell you what it is because it's super secret. But man, it's like, I'm so excited for her and everything, right? That's good. But what if she were to give him a little bit more information than she was supposed to? And then he goes out drinking with his buddies, golfing, smoking cigars, and you get a little loose and you're like, dude, so she's working on this project where, they're like building this really cool widget. This is just going to really take the company to the next level. Just by saying something like that, he has shown that he's not really caring about the security of his wife and the company. And it goes back to her. She's not really caring about the security of her company because she has a responsibility to the company to protect that data. She's the front line. And if she's telling even her husband some of this stuff, which, a lot of people are like, yeah, but husbands and wives, they can talk and communicate. Yes. But if you're under a contract where you've signed something at your work that says you won't talk about this because it is classified at a certain level, you don't even talk to your partner about that. You don't talk to anybody except for the people that are approved to talk to about it. So the family now becomes involved in this cybersecurity culture because they're part of it, whether they want to be or not. They're one of the components of that family is doing something for a company that could be devastating if it were to get into the wrong hands or the information were to leak out. This can also be used by malicious actors to kidnap or social engineer people to try to get information out of them. And they'll, of course, go after the kids because kids don't know anything, but they overhear mom and dad talking and they're like, oh, mom just talked about this like weird thing and this kind of stuff. Oh, well, someone could try to get them because they don't know any better. Kids are still learning and developing and they don't understand, full right from wrong and what you say in certain circumstances and not. So every single person in the family is important, and it's important that everybody understands this need. Now, I'm not saying that everybody's just got to go change their lives and just shut down and get rid of all their social media. I did. I pretty much got rid of everything, but I'm in cybersecurity and I just don't want to be a target for people out there. There's even a risk that I become a target now just by posting these videos. But it's a risk I'm willing to take to help other people because there's just so many stories out there of people getting phished, or we call it vished, which is a voice phishing. Somebody calls you on the phone, tries to get some information out of you or scam you out of some money. We have smishing, which is SMS. That's your texting. You'll get those texts that says, this is the Nevada DMV and you're overdue on some things and we're going to call the police if you don't pay it. Yeah, that's bogus. That's fake. The DMV is never going to text you to tell you that you're late on something. So these are all components of attacks and they affect every single person in the family. So as I dive into each one of these different topics, there's going to be a component of why it's important in the business, why it's important in the family, and what you can do, especially pointing at the legal guardians, the dads, the moms, the grandmas, the grandpas, very close friends of the family, maybe like a godfather, aunts, uncles. Adults are really the focus of this because you, as the caregiver of a child, or a kid or a teenager, it's your responsibility to protect them. And they could be used by an adversary to get to someone or something. Now, these are very potentially drastic cases, but you never know. In today's day and age, it's becoming more and more common, especially like trafficking and things like that. So I'm going to dive into all kinds of different topics. I actually have a list here that I've been making of all the different topics, which includes passwords, multi-factor authentication, or MFA as we call it. There's a new kind of security feature coming out called passkeys that we'll dive into a little bit. QR code safety, scanning QR codes with your phone and the potential dangers of that. Password vaults, which are a great thing, a phenomenal thing. I'm going to really push that one because that is one of the best things, the easiest things that you can do as a person to protect yourself online. Mixing a password vault with MFA, you're going to be at a good, solid, basic level of security, and that's really important. We'll go into AI, some of the challenges and dangers of AI. There's things that people just don't recognize or understand about AI, and how you can make sure that you're protecting your information while you're using AI, because no matter what you do, you're feeding their learning machines, whether you want to or not. I'm definitely going to have some topics focused on teens and kids online, especially with their games, the Roblox, the Minecraft, the Fortnite, all those kinds of things, chats, Discord. We don't want them to not do anything, not have any fun, but we do want to protect them and make sure that we're putting our family first over, other people. We're going to go into some physical security things with the family, ways that you as a family can communicate and protect each other when you're out and about, especially if you're traveling on vacation. We'll go into some other different things like, protecting your digital wallets on your phones or your actual wallets, cards, some of the things hackers use. We'll also do some home-based stuff. So we're going to work on how you can protect your home networks a little bit better with those, Wi-Fi routers that come out of the box, as well as some ad blocking so that they can't track you and build social profiles on you and then, push certain ads to you. And also just basic computer etiquette. How are you making sure that your computers are protected? VPNs, a virtual private network, I'm going to go into that a little bit. That's a pretty easy thing. Many of these things are going to have a cost to them, but it's not much. And when you look at the overall strategy of what are you trying to accomplish, protecting your family, what is the cost? Would you do anything? I know that as a father, I would do anything for my kids. Well, spending some money on good quality equipment, some good protection software to put on my machines, also some control software to make sure that my kids' screen time is being tracked and monitored and the applications they're using and how much time they're spending on it, all those things. It's a worthwhile cost. So that's just kind of a big intro of what we're going to dive into. I'll do my best to do some screen recordings and show things. I'm still learning how to just do some of the basic stuff. I'm not a video editor yet. So I'm gonna kind of figure that out as I go. So ask for patience as I kind of figure out how these different pieces work. Anyways, see you soon.